It's Tuesday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Hope you guys are having a great day out there, staying warmish as best as you can. Probably staying home with your kids if you got kids. A lot of schools were canceled. Out here in District 196, we were ahead of the game. There was no school Tuesday to begin with, part of a 4-day weekend to go with President's Day, so we didn't have to cancel school. We just weren't going to go to school anyway, so our kids are home as well. Those unplanned days, though, those are the hard ones, so hope you guys are making it through that. Some good podcasting to get you through it as well. Chip Scoggins from the Star Tribune joins me in a little bit. He had a column recently where he talked to 12 different athletes about what makes a good owner, a good team owner in sports. Some interesting insights from that I wanted to talk to Chip about and get his perspective on, a lot of change here in the Twin Cities. The Twins are up for sale. We might know the identity of the identified new owner by the start of the season. The Timberwolves, they just went through the arbitration process. As long as they are approved by the NBA Board of Governors, Mark Lowry and Alex Rodriguez will take over that team in not so long. So a lot of changing of the guard, a good time to think about not just ownership, but what comprises a good owner. Chip and I'll get into that and talk a little St. Thomas men's basketball at the end of the segment as well. Some Gopher basketball stuff towards the end of the show. First, though, what I miss, happy NFL franchise tag window opening day to those who celebrate. That's a lot to say. Nobody's probably celebrating, but this is officially when the period for putting the franchise tag on players opens up. February 18th today, goes through March 4th, so a couple of weeks. A lot of talk about will the Vikings put the franchise tag on quarterback Sam Darnold. Had an excellent, unexpected season for the Vikings last season. 35 touchdown passes, over 4,000 yards passing. They go 14-3. However, a couple things to note. One, the 3 in that was a bad loss to the Lions where Sam Darnold did not look good, and the playoff loss to the Rams was not a good look either. Under duress in that game, but didn't make a lot of the plays that we had come accustomed to seeing from him, especially in the second half of the season when he really took off, went from being someone who was holding things down and not making mistakes to someone who was actively winning games for the Vikings. So the opportunity is there. The possibility is there that the Vikings would say, hey, don't want to commit long term, but we want to keep this guy in the fold for a year. $40 million, though, is the price tag, and they have J.J. McCarthy, number 10 overall pick in the 2024 draft, sitting there trying to rehab, trying to get himself into a spot where he can be the starter for the next, however many years, especially these next few years where he is under cheap team control. So you got to keep all of that in perspective. You got to look at Sam Darnold. Spotrac is saying, hey, 4 years, $160 million is the target for Sam Darnold. I don't think he's going to get that much. I don't think some team is going to give him 4 years, and he might not want 4 years at this point. He might want another swing at this later on. I think 3 for 110, maybe 120 with about 75 or 80 guaranteed. That might be feasible. Whatever that number is, that's more than the Vikings are going to end up paying. So do they do a 1-year, $40 million deal for Sam Darnold? I don't think so. Do they risk it and do the franchise tag and then try to trade him? Risky. You're going to get an asset anyway a year from now if and when he becomes a free agent because you've got, or if and when you get the compensatory pick, stuff like that. So I don't think this is worth it. I think we maybe have been thinking about the franchise tag with the Vikings all wrong. I think there is a candidate for them to use the franchise tag in this 2-week window. Yeah, Sam Darnold maybe is a possibility. I think a likelier possibility, though, is someone who would cost half that much. Cornerback Byron Murphy Jr. Number one, doesn't cost as much, right? Half the price for the cornerback the cornerback franchise tag versus the quarterback franchise tag. Byron Murphy, a guy they wanted to sign to an extension before the season started. He kind of bet on himself, said, nope, let's play this thing out. ends up having 6 interceptions, tied for third in the NFL, tied for first among NFL cornerbacks. He was tremendous. You want to talk about depth? There is no succession plan to Byron Murphy right now. There is a succession plan to Sam Darnold. There is no succession plan to Byron Murphy right now. There is nothing in the cupboard unless you love Mekhi Blackman coming off that torn ACL. Unless you love anybody else, they might sign in free agency. So think about that. Could it be Byron Murphy Jr. on a 1-year, $20 million tag, or do the tag now, buys you some time, gets him, under team control, but buys you some time to maybe negotiate a long-term extension with Byron Murphy? I think that's a possibility. I would put that at a higher likelihood than tagging Sam Darnold at this point, because I don't think they are serious about having Sam Darnold here next year. I think they probably realize that they got the absolute best, the peak of Sam Darnold's powers in 2024. Not saying he won't be a good starter for another team, not saying he might not go on to other success, but I don't know if Sam Darnold's ever going to have as good of a year as he had in 2024. If you're the Vikings, do you really want to go chasing that with a bunch of money in 2025 or even beyond if you turn that into a long-term contract? I think that's a dicier proposition. That is not what all this has been leading to. Byron Murphy Jr., though, on the other hand, is a guy who they have shown long-term interest in the past, and is a guy who plays a position that they are in desperate need of retaining, and is a guy who would make half of what Sam Darnold would make next year and would still allow you to use that $60+ million in cap space, divvy that up even a little bit more beyond that. So let's watch for that in the next 2 weeks. Yeah, sure, it could be Sam Darnold, but maybe, just maybe, the more likely outcome is that it is Byron Murphy Jr. Let's bring in Star Tribune columnist Chip Scoggins right now. Chip, you've been busy on a number of different projects, but I thought it was interesting. Over the weekend, you wrote about, obviously this didn't just come together. You don't just talk to 12 people over the weekend, but it was when it was published. Like what makes a good owner in pro sports, and an apt time to do it, obviously, since, Wolves are for sale, and we got some clarity, at least on the direction that's going. And Adam Silver over the weekend, NBA commissioner, said, I don't see why that wouldn't get approved by the Board of Governors as long as it gets to that point. And then Twins are for sale too, and we might know, I talked to Phil Miller last week that said, might have an owner identified by opening day. So these things are happening pretty fast. So good time to check in on what exactly does it mean to be a good owner in a sports market? Yeah,
with the two of the four, three if you count the links with the Timberwolves, in the process of changing ownership hands. I thought, it kind of made me think, I'm going to ask some former pro athletes that I know and have been around over the years. Just one question: what makes a good owner? And told them, hey, I won't use your name, but if I have honest responses, and I think a dozen of them, I sent out about 20. I think a dozen responded with the text. A couple of, about half of them called to talk. And it was interesting. I think there's a pretty, it was all sports. All four of the major sports. And there was a pretty, I think, universal line through. And the obvious thing is spend money, right? Okay.
Sure.
That's the bottom line. Make sure my check's clear.
Right.
But I will follow up. I did ask him a couple of them about how aware they were of money being paid. But I just wanted, what makes a good owner? From a player's perspective, what makes a good owner? And I think all of them had similar themes in that be involved, but not too involved.
Yeah,
be
I got
present.
A lot of that. Yeah.
Be present. Don't talk down. Don't govern from way up here and look down on athletes. Mm-hmm. Be around, know what's going on, but don't meddle. And that's, I think that's probably on target for if you're a player's perspective. Yes. Yeah. I think it's important that they know the owner is around and cares about what is going on and has a pulse of what's happening, and not just in another state or somewhere else, or just this is kind of a side hobby. But they also said you can, get in trouble when you're over delegating. And so one of them, the athletes, was pretty succinct. He said, put the right people in the right spots and get out of the way.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty on point.
And we'll get into a lot of the specifics here in a minute, but I thought, as I was reading it, I was like, man, I imagine that owning a pro sports franchise has become more complicated over the years as franchise values have gone up, as it becomes, such a heavy financial lift, and usually a very good investment if you look at the track records of, hey, the Pohlad family bought the team for what was like $44 million, and now it's going to be sold for like $1.5 billion. Glenn Taylor bought the Wolves for kind of that same ballpark amount, and it's same sale price. So it's a good investment, but owning a team has changed over the years. It probably used to be mostly about, will the check clear? You make sure the check clears, because the things were on a more of a shoestring. Now you got to keep people happy. You got to have the right kind of mix. A couple people mentioned you got to take care of the families. You got to make sure it's this kind of welcoming atmosphere that you are creating with your money.
Well, yeah, because you're talking about billion-dollar franchises now.
Yes.
And just the money being spent on player salaries now. I mean, these are huge investments, and so there's a lot more into. A couple players mentioned the strength and recovery, the injury prevention, the support staff. Like, you have to invest in those areas, and that's a big part of it. And as one player said, a lot of these people made their fortunes in businesses, did other places, but they have a passion for sports, and so they want to be involved in. There's that control part of it, and as one athlete said, he's like, well, every American or most Americans have a passion for sports. So it doesn't make them owners. Like, you have to find the right people and trust them. You have to find the right GM, the right president of operations, the right coach, and trust that they know more than you do. And it's a hard balance, because this is your investment. You poured a lot of money into it. You are used to kind of running the show. And so the best owners do a good job of giving the resources and hiring the right people and having input, saying yes or no.
Right.
But not, as one player said, don't stand in the lunch line telling an athlete what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing on the field like that.
Right.
And I remember I was talking to Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah last spring.
Yep.
They'd had the draft. They had got the free agents in there. And I remember asking him, I said, how often do the Wilfs tell you no on something?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, we have to present our case to them. And if we present the case and we explain why we want to do something, why we want to make this, signing, why we want to do this, and we articulate it, they'll sign off on it, but we have to be clear in why we're doing it and have a vision and a plan for it. And so I think that's a good way to look at it. It's like, the owners want to have some say in personnel. They want to understand why you're doing it, but not a Jerry Jones situation.
Where micromanage, where he's the general manager.
Yeah, that's it's probably not a coincidence why Dallas is struggling so much.
Well, they haven't been an NFC title. I think they've been the longest NFC title game drought in the whole conference right now.
Yeah, when you look at all the resources and money value of that franchise. So, but it was interesting. Yeah, a couple players talked about families and making sure they feel, because it's all about, if you're an athlete, you want to make sure that. A couple of them said, make it feel like a family. It's still a business, and at the end of the day, they're going to cut you or whatever. I mean, it is. But while you're there, you want to feel like you're being taken care of.
Well, yeah, and then I think you articulated this already, but it's this kind of balancing act where the owner needs to be invested enough that they know what's going on with the team so they can make good decisions, but they don't want them to be so hands-on that they're micromanaging. Like it's kind of like running any business, I would imagine, from a top-down standpoint. Like, probably not any different from like what is an ideal business owner, CEO, stuff like that. But it is, there is some art and science to it.
Well, it'll be interesting. Let's say just from the Wolves' perspective. Mark Laurie and A-Rod, they don't live here. I mean, I think they have homes here now, and they're going to be more present here, but they're not from here. They're not from Minnesota. No. We don't know about the Twins ownership, but if it's an outside group, football's different because it's
once a week.
Yeah. It's once a week, so you can fly in, you can spend a couple days here, be present. It'll be interesting to see how when obviously Glenn Taylor did Mankato, so he was at every game or most games. It'll be interesting to see how visible and present Laurie and A-Rod are. I got to imagine they're going to want to be initially a lot here. Maybe spend a lot of their time here. I know you can commute pretty easy when you're on a private jet, get back and forth to wherever they live. But I think that'll be important for both new owners to be around and at least initially early on be present. And so it's not just like some outside entity. Because think back to when the Wills bought the Vikings, Mikey. Yeah. What was the conversation? What's their intentions here?
Yeah.
What's this New Jersey brothers coming here? What are they going to do? They're going to move the team. And we already started hearing some of that with A-Rod and Laurie because they're going to want a new arena, right? I mean, that's first and foremost. They're going to.
I think Taylor would have wanted that too. Like, assuming this transfer happens, I think Taylor would have wanted the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, eventually. It's one of the older NBA arenas, so that's going to be pretty early on the docket, I would think. So you need to be present and say, hey, we're here. We're Minnesotans. We're keeping it here, that type of thing. So I think that'll be a big step for both ownerships to, show their face and be visible early on a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, assuming the NBA Board of Governors approves them, which sounds like could be as early as late March from what Adam Silver was saying, I think some work they have to do that Laurie and A-Rod is obviously with the Wolves, but they've been pretty visible there. They've not been as visible with the Lynx, and that's still a pretty, not only a valuable part of their property, but the team that's had the most success of anybody here and has a very well-established fan base, and that league is really starting to ascend. I think they have some work to do for visibility with that because Glenn Taylor's at almost all the Lynx games too. Yeah,
and that's when you look at how fast the WNBA is growing in popularity with sponsors, the real money-making opportunity there with the growth with fans and all that. And so, you can't just – they're not just buying the Timberwolves.
No.
I mean, you have to be present there. And so I assume – I would think that they would.
Yeah.
Particularly, I mean, this is a very successful franchise.
Yes.
Look at the championships, and they're in the finals last year.
Yeah, they almost won it all last year.
So, but it was interesting talking to a number of the athletes. And I asked them, a couple I talked to on the phone, I said, just out of curiosity, like how aware were you as a player of how much an owner spent on not just salaries? I mean, that you always are, but all the other stuff. Like how much did he spend on? And one of them said, to some degree, particularly as it related to performance, health, training room,
recovery,
all that stuff, recovery. Like that's a big part. He thinks the organizations that really invest in that are going to have a leg up. One of the athletes said very much so, said amenities are a must. Like you look around like that, you have to spend money there. And then one of them said, I was so busy just trying to make it to the next day. Said, I paid attention when we got like the locker room got updated, or there was he's a shiny new piece of equipment in the weight room, but I was more concerned about just keeping the job and that. So it was interesting. It was kind of a spectrum there that how much they were cognizant of how much an owner is investing in, not just salaries, but all the other stuff, the infrastructure, I'd call it.
Well, and I would say like all, Timberwolves, Lynx, Twins, Vikings, Wild, we can extend this to Loons, like all the big teams, like they all have either relatively new stadiums, relatively new practice facilities, or both. And there seems to be the infrastructure. Like I don't think right now, even before any transfer happens, that there's a flat out bad owner in town. I think all of these owners kind of check different boxes and run things a little bit differently, but you don't have a disaster of an owner here right now.
No, and one athlete said it's not like the facilities race in college football or college sports where everybody wants the Taj Mahal and then you got to build it. And like, it's not to that degree. He said, yes, you pay attention to it when you're a free agent, but it's not like he didn't think it's to the degree that you see in college sports. But Yeah, I think a lot of them really, put a big emphasis on, and we see it with the NFL now has the players report card, and the Wolves have scored high. Yeah.
Yes.
But I think the sports performance is a big deal nowadays.
Yeah.
The recovery, all the, what do you call them, cryo chambers, the different things.
Yeah.
Those things are important. Like,
yeah.
When you look at what the Wolves built with Tria now, that's a spectacular facility. The Wolves redid their practice facility. I don't know how many was it been, 5 years maybe?
No, a little bit more than that, probably like 6 or 7, but yeah.
6, 7, yeah. The Wild have that practice facility now, so because of the conflicts they always had.
Right.
So that's the saying. I think the owners have invested in these facilities, in the amenities and
right.
different sports performance things that, as one player said, they're a must. You have to have them because when guys are at home, they want to be able to get the best treatment. They want to be able to have all the different things that help them recovery because the seasons are so long. So I think that's where owners are really investing a lot of resources right now.
And, a couple more things on this, then maybe one more thing on St. Thomas basketball before we go. It does strike me, though, like personality-wise, if we just talk about the owners that we know of right now, like I do think there is a spectrum. Like I think Craig Leopold from the Wild wears his heart on his sleeve. Like
for sure.
You watch him, he's at every game. He is like living and dying with every face-off. Like he wants so badly to win. And it's also kind of interesting because the NHL is probably the one sport out of all of these that we're talking about where you can't just outspend anybody like that. It's the hardest cap. Like you have the least probably amount of ways to impact your team with straight up salary in the NHL than you do in baseball, in basketball, like going above the luxury tax. The NFL actually spending instead of just having these blank cap spaces, things like that. Yeah. And I think the Wolves are pretty attached, I think, and they come in and they want to win. I never got the sense that in the later days, at least, that the Pohlads were as live or die with the team. I'm off base with that. And I think Taylor always wanted to win too. You'd see him. He would react. He wants to win. But I think if you're talking about like the scales, I think like maybe like Leopold is at this kind of like one end of like living and dying. And the Pohlad family at this iteration was at the other end. Yeah.
Once a year, the Wild will always have a kind of a preseason night where the media can go down in Craig's suite and watch a period there. And even in a preseason game, he's like got the paper rolled up. He's on the edge of his seat. So yeah, he lives and dies with the games. I'll tell you, the Wilfs, we stand outside the locker room after games waiting to go in, and they come out. You can read body language. You don't have to know the score, what happened. You can tell they are fans, and so they live it too. But they don't meddle. I don't think. They're emotional. They want to. They're passionate about it. They want to win. They made no secret about trying to get to the Super Bowl, but it's not like they're telling them who they should sign at quarterback and who they, those type of things. Now they may give direction on what they feel like is the best financial because they're writing the checks. But yeah, the Pohlads. I don't know if detached is the right word. I just towards the end, it may be because baseball's every night. You're not going to see.
Yeah, and and by the end it was third generation. Like maybe it's not the people who bought the team. It's they didn't buy it for they don't run it for the same reason that Carl or his offspring did.
Yeah. So, but I think A-Rod and Lori will be very into it. Obviously, one was a professional baseball player, so he has that kind of competitiveness already, and I think anybody that amasses a fortune in business, you have to be pretty competitive, right?
Yes, true.
You have to be driven by success, and so I think anybody who owns a team is going to have that. It's just how do you channel it? Do you channel it in the right way, or do you try to micromanage? That's the trick.
I think of the group right now, Not saying he does, but of the group right now, I think Craig probably has the greatest temptation to meddle, even if he doesn't always meddle. And I think A-Rod and Lori will give that a run for their money, because I think they will think they have some ideas on how to run things too.
Yeah, it'll be. I mean, and that's where you have Tim Conley, you have Billy Guerin, you have veteran GMs, and that, to me, it that's where it's important that you have a very good structure in place, starting with your general manager or your president, however you want to frame it, and you can give input, but that person has to be willing to say, nope, that's not going to work. Right. We're not going to do that. This is the plan. You're the owner, but this you hired me to make this plan, and here's the plan, and we're sticking with it. And so, and I'm sure there's some battles in there sometimes over that, because hey, it's my money I'm spending. I would like to see this, but again, you hired this person for a particular reason. This is their expertise. A-Rod did not play professional basketball. He hasn't run a basketball team. Tim Conley has. No. Craig Leopold, I don't think, played professional hockey, but Billy Guerin, you got to hire the right people and just trust them that. And you know what? At the end of the day, if the plan doesn't work, it's your prerogative to fire and hire someone else. That's true. So, but I'm really. I mean, how often do you get two new sports owners in a town in the same time?
It's rare, and it's on kind of the same timeline now too, because of the way the Wolves thing shook out. It's just kind of funny. I think the thing that's got to drive an owner the most crazy is if you bring someone in a trade or free agency and they get hurt and they don't play, and you're just sitting there like, I'm writing checks for somebody who's never played.
Or if you give them a big check and they fail.
Yes, or they flop. Yeah.
They flop. That one is like, that's where, you may lose some equity with the owner.
Right.
Say, trust me, we're going to spend X amount of dollars on this person. It's going to be great. And it doesn't work out. And so, you go back to look what Tim Conley did when he made the Gobert trade. The initial results were like, oh my gosh, what happened here?
What happened? What are they doing?
And then you go back and you trade Towns, and now some of that's financial. That might have been ownership driven there too. Like, hey, we're second apron. There's punitive. Right. And so it's as an owner, if you're writing big checks and it doesn't produce the results that you want, I'm sure there's a temptation to say, I want to get more involved here on this.
Right.
Decision,
Right.
So,
but
it's it was a fun exercise and fun to kind of catch up with some. I thought the athletes I talked to had some really interesting insight about what they felt like was a good owner. So I hope people give it a read.
Yeah.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
I agree. Go find that on StarTribune.com. Really quick before we go, you were out at St. Thomas men's basketball last week. First place team. They play with an energy. They're starting to capture a certain slice right now of, this is a good basketball state. We think of it as the state of hockey. This is a good basketball state. People appreciate good basketball, and that's a program on the rise right now. Yeah,
I would say if you are a fan of good basketball offensively and defensively too, because St. Thomas is really good defensively, but if you want to watch a really good functioning offense, go watch them play. I'd say they do three things. They share it, they take care of it, and they shoot the heck out of it. Yeah. And they have spacing. They're constantly moving. They share the ball. They are one of the best in all of college basketball in not turning the ball over, and they shoot a ton of threes. I've said this for years, and I'll keep saying it. Johnny Tower is one of the best basketball coaches you're going to find. I mean, the guy is so creative with his offense. They beat Omaha, which was the first place season. This is year 4 of them being Division I.
Yeah, which means they're still not eligible, right?
Next year, NCAA. NCAA knocked off the last year. Right. So next year they'll be eligible to go to the NCAA tournament. They're leading the Summit League right now.
Right,
they're first place with some traditional teams that have been perennial teams going to the NCAA tournament, March Madness. So They're starting to get sellouts now. They're moving into that brand new arena next year. I was talking to some people over there. It's really coming together quickly.
Yeah.
They're going to later this spring. They're going to have
against some people's wishes. In
the some neighbors over there. They're going to have I think start later this spring. Start showing some tours and all that. But they're a fun team. They're doing it the right way. This is the first year that every player on the team is on scholarship. Before it's kind of been they phased it in,
staggered it.
Yeah. So it will not be long before St. Thomas is in March Madness. I can tell you that because the way they are a good fit for the Summit. They're winning. They're playing the right way and recruiting the right way, and they have I think a first class A+ coach in Johnny Tower.
Yeah, it'd be fun at some point when they are eligible for the postseason, and if and when the Gophers can get things to a certain point. I mean, that's the dream, right? Like they both of them, that'd be kind of a rising tide lifts all boats kind of situation. Like if they both get good and develop some kind of like Wisconsin, Marquette, Xavier,
Butler,
and Xavier against Cincinnati kind of thing. Like, that's what you want, right? That's what you want.
That's what I mean. I think that's what St. Thomas envisions, kind of that small private Catholic school, really, really good at basketball.
Yeah.
And so that's their dream. And I think moving into that new arena, so it'll be a shared arena with hockey, but I think moving into that arena next year is going to really do wonders for them too. So
awesome, Chip. Appreciate the time as always. We will catch up with you again soon.
All right, brother. Thank you, man.
Great stuff from Chip. Love his perspectives. Glad we got to talk a little St. Thomas. Let's finish with the Coolers. St. Thomas plays next on Wednesday. That is a road game at South Dakota, and they play at Oral Roberts after that. Next two after that, though, against North Dakota and Kansas City, looks like to end the season. Those are home games, so interesting to see where they're at with their schedule. So 4 more league games, 2 on the road, and then 2 at home to finish their regular season portion of their schedule. And like Chip said, not eligible for NCAA play this year, even if they were to win that conference. But next year, they got the year chopped off of what was supposed to be kind of the punitive. You got to have that 5-year transition period. They got 1 year lopped off. So next year, St. Thomas will be eligible for the NCAA men's basketball tournament. Now, the Gophers probably not going to make it in men's basketball this season unless they go on some sort of run. They have a game tonight against UCLA. They've been a lot better lately, of course. They started the year, 0-6 in the Big Ten, 5-3 since then to get to 5-9, trying to improve themselves, trying to get in a better position. So that is a big game for them. Gopher women have a huge game Wednesday against Purdue. Kind of a must-win at this point after dropping some games against good teams recently. That's a big one for them because they are still right in the mix for an NCAA tournament bid themselves, just like the St. Thomas men could be next season and beyond. That will do it for me today. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Good stuff coming up the rest of the week. Stay warm. Stay inside unless you have to go outside. I am Michael Rand, back at it again on Wednesday.